Now, moving on in the bulletin, the Facebook CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, will appear before the members of the European Parliament in a couple of hours from now. The hearing has been scheduled to question Zuckerberg's misuse of Facebook user data by Cambridge Analytica that affected up to 87 million users. The European Union has clearly stated that the Zuckerberg owes an explanation to 2.7 million EU citizens who have been affected by the data sharing scandal. What is to note here is that Zuckerberg's public hearing with the European Parliament is taking place days before the EU goes on to introduce new tough data protection rules. The EU's General Data Protection Regulation, which comes into effect on May 25th, aims to give users more control over how their personal information is stored and used online. It will also penalize companies with big fines if they are found to be breaking the rules. Zuckerberg's hour-long meeting with Parliament's most senior members was initially set to be held behind closed doors, but it will now be live streamed. We are yet to see if the European lawmakers would give Zuckerberg a grilling similar to his 10-hour interrogation in US Congress last month. And I'm joined by Jack Parrock from Brussels. Jack, my question to you is that what are the questions which are being really expected by the parliamentarians, lawmakers, and what would they like to know from Zuckerberg in context of Europe?
Well, there's a lot that these members of the European Parliament are going to want to ask Mark Zuckerberg, but we've only got an hour and a half for them to put their questions to him, which is nowhere near the same length as the two-day US congressional hearing that we saw last month. Remember, a lot of those US politicians were criticised for not grilling Mark Zuckerberg well enough and not being well enough researched about the issues. And that's been very well aware here in Europe, and there's a lot of pressure on these politicians to make sure they stick some major questions to him. That's what the European civil society has been asking for, and they want to ask essentially where Facebook has been getting its money from, especially regarding political campaigning on the platform. How much money has been coming from different political parties paying for their adverts to try and influence elections? That's going to be a real key issue today. And they're also going to want to ask Mark Zuckerberg how prepared Facebook is for the incoming General Data Protection Regulation, which comes in only on Friday. And last month, when he was in that congressional hearing in the United States, he a photograph was taken of a piece of paper that his notes were on, saying that they essentially weren't quite ready yet. So there'll be a lot of questions put to that. How ready is Facebook to deal with this sweeping data protection piece of legislation that's coming in?
Jack, you know, for example, when the controversy woke for India and United States of America, the issue was the sanctity of the elections, the sanctity of the electoral processes. Is that too a concern in Europe?
It certainly is. That's exactly the question. How is Facebook influencing that, and how is the platform dealing with ensuring that sort of the political spectrum is sort of well represented, and that there aren't these echo chambers, that there are no algorithms, and also who's paying what, which political sort of groups are paying what for their advertising? This is incredibly important as well, and the European Union is very keen to be aware of this, with European elections coming up only about a year away from now, and also some pretty key elections in other parts of Europe, including in Ireland, where Facebook for a long time has held its HQ.
So the bottom line is that, Jack, that all these questions, when asked, will they be televised? Is this something which will be available for people to see? Or are they planning to do it closed door or divided into two sessions?
Yeah, initially this hearing was going to be held closed door, and the European Parliament was heavily criticised from every corner of the political spectrum, essentially, saying that this needs to be a public hearing like it was in the United States. And then we saw a tweet from the European Parliament President Antonio Tajani saying that Mark Zuckerberg had agreed now for it to be public. So there will be a keen eye on this hour-and-a-half meeting. And the thing is because Mark Zuckerberg spoke so much in front of the US congressional hearing, this really isn't only about his credibility. This now is about the credibility of the European politicians. How much do they know about these issues that affect their citizens, that are all, like many of them, users of Facebook? And how much can they question this CEO?
Absolutely, absolutely. Very well put, Jack. It's also about the questions which will be put up to Mark Zuckerberg. But this is all in this edition of Dispatch. News and other stories will continue on the other side.